Thank you so much, everyone, for coming today to the panel discussion about resilience and compassion and leadership. Can anyone who is not a speaker then mute? Okay, you're already muted. Amazing. I see Zoom rules apply already. Lovely. This panel discussion will also be recorded just for you to know. If you need a transcript, you can enable that in the panel below. Where the podcast will go after for the recording, that would be my website, which is lilylehman.com. And in case you want to listen back to it afterwards. So let me introduce myself. My name is Lily. My pronouns are she, they. I have brown hair that reaches to my shoulder. I'm wearing a black crop top, a scarf with red flowers on, and a rust-colored jacket. Now, why don't we start with our first panelist to make a short introduction? What I love to hear is your name, your pronouns, a short visual description, and because we're not all familiar with your work as I am, a short word or two about what you do professionally. Sally Ann, would you mind starting?
No, of course. Hello, everyone. I'm Sally Ann Gritton. My pronouns are she, hers. I am a white woman with red hair, which goes down to my shoulders. I'm wearing a Mount View lanyard and a flowery top. And I have about 35 years of work experience in the theatre sector and in the last 20 years almost the training sector. I grew up in South London. I went to Goldsmiths College and RADA, and I worked as an actor and director for some years before taking on the artistic directorship of Sorted Productions. Sorted was a sort of mid-scale touring company, and we platformed Welsh writing in English. So lots of work between Wales and London, and networking all sorts of people together to get some voices heard, and supporting emerging artists. And really out of that work and sort of supporting emerging artists, I was very much drawn to the drama school sector. And really that's because, once I came into, certainly once I came into Mountview and started directing, I directed at various other drama schools before this, but the pull made me never leave. To be working, it's an absolute privilege to be working on a daily basis with emerging artists and helping them to find their voices and to be heard. And so that really has, Mountview has been my sort of committed project, I suppose, since about 2004. And yes, and I've recently become the principal in September this year, September 22. So yes, that's me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Rahwa, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you, Lily. So, hello, my name is Rahwa Zimikael. I'm the founder of Healing Fortune, where I coach and mentor leadership personalities in terms of emotional intelligence, as well as I do have like a B2C coaching business where I do have products all around, manifestation, intuition, a lot of, all the things around emotional freedom. And my background is I do have a bachelor degree in biochemistry. Afterwards, I did like a master's in international business. And afterwards, I actually did have like the perfect CV for all those big 5 companies, as you all know, probably. And but then after my master thesis, I questioned myself and decided to go for startup. So I moved from Frankfurt to Berlin where I worked with several startups as a freelancer. And after 2 years, I decided to found my own company. So that's my that's my career so far. And yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to talk with you about leadership, and especially resilience in leadership, because I think that's a huge topic. And as we're entering a new era when it comes to working environment, it's very important. So I'm very glad that Lily took the chance and offers this panel discussion today. So I'm really looking forward.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to have you, because you bring a totally different mindset to it, as you are one of the maybe also the only person not coming from theatre or anything related to theatre. So Sammy, do you mind?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Sammy Squire. I don't have my surname up on my Zoom. Apologies. My pronouns are she, her. I am currently the interim marketing and sales director at Park Theatre, where Lily is sadly coming to the end of her marketing internship. We're going to miss them, a lot. I've worked in the industry on and off for, coming up to over 25 years. So I've worked, I'm doing an interim cover at Park Theatre, a maternity cover. I've done a couple of years of freelancing. Before that, I was head of marketing at Sadler's Wells for over 12 years. Unfortunately, was a pandemic redundancy case, as so many in the arts were, which obviously, resilience and everything else that we could be talking about today, that was a big challenge for me personally, but also after 12 years of being there was possibly time that I did move on and fly the nest a little bit. And then I've worked at other big brands. I did a stint at publishing, so I did 6 years at Time Out, at News International, which I didn't love and didn't stay there for very long. British Film Institute, Young Vic, so a kind of real range of, I started my career at a commercial West End producers in 1997, and it was very exciting the time then, because we worked on some very kind of lots of new writing, where the West End was kind of awash with lots of farces and musicals, and the producers that I worked for brought in stuff like Shopping and Effing back in 1997, Train Spotting, Disco Pigs, a really different landscape than the West End was back then. My role at Park Theatre, so we have our own shows, our own productions that we look after all the marketing for. We obviously, commercial, we don't get any Arts Council funding, so we run all the marketing campaigns. We have various memberships, and we have our Park Up membership, which is our under 26-year-olds. So we look after everything branding, sales wise, making sure we hit targets, but also ensuring that the content assets, everything's on brand, looks good, following, everything you can imagine marketing sales wise. And yeah, I'm coming to the end of my contract in August and thinking if I'm going to stay in the industry or not after all this time, just because, I guess, the resilience and compassion that, we'll probably come on to that. So, yeah, but it's great. I mean, I love it. It always draws me back when I disappear off it kind of draws you back, because the passion of everybody that works in the industry is totally unfounded. It's just, you just don't get it anywhere else. So we put on some great shows. That's me in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. Yes,
it also looks like I've got a basketball hoop coming out of my head. I'm in my son's bedroom.
Thank you, Sammy. Yes, definitely the passion is quite unrivaled in the theatre industry. Well, let's get us started then. We are very keen on getting to talk about compassion and resilience. I would fire away the first question. So, panelists, what does a healthy employer-employee relationship mean to you in your work? Rahwa, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so for me, it's basically the foundation of an employer-employee relationship is actually the trust for me. So in terms of, okay, how openly vulnerable can show each participant to each other. So that means in terms of, okay, the employer, how can he like create like a framework where the employee can actually give constructive feedback? So is the employer or the leadership personality, is he or she even in the position to be open for feedback? And I think that's actually the most foundational thing. Afterwards, of course, comes like the art of communication. So the basic must be the trust, and then based on that, let's take a look at how they communicate with each other. That means, for example, in my one-on-one work, I see how often people do feel offended just because how they receive the message that they get. So we all know, of course, the I don't know, how do you say in English though? Sender-Empfänger-Prinzip? Sender and receiver?
Yeah, sending and receiving.
Okay, so yeah, based on that. So that means a lot of miscommunication and misunderstanding, which results in a bad relationship between those two, is basically based on the fact that they mostly like receive the message in a different way. So that means to have a holistic point of view in terms of, okay, how was the intention of the other person, and how do I receive it, and how can I reflect on it and talk openly with the person? So that brings us back to the communication part, right? And that brings us back to, okay, how much do I trust this person? Can I be open and vulnerable with him or her, right? So I think that's the foundation, first of all, but I'm very keen to hear what Sally and Sammy are saying about that.
Yes, I'd I'd agree. I think starting from a place of collaboration with your colleagues. So, you know, as ignoring the hierarchy, not playing status, immediately allows you to be in the same space as your colleague and to listen, and to truly listen. You know, we're all running around like crazy things these days, and actually we've got to remember that time is something that we do have and we can choose to take, and the best communication is always going to come as a result of taking that time, truly listening, and I think being there as a support for your employees. You know, what do they need? It's not about managing them, it's about supporting them, because if they're supported, they will share with you much more honestly what it is they're struggling with. Then you're much more likely to be able to help them, and then the results are better anyway. So supporting them, and also I think, you know, in that two-way relationship, you've got to look after yourself as well, because you're no use to your employees if you're struggling yourself.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you've both said, most of what you've both said, and just to add onto some of that, I think having an open, I mean, my experience is not with my employees as such, my team. So I manage quite a small team now at Sadler's Wells. I managed a pretty big team, and I've certainly learned. I'm learning all the time. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I was a very different manager, leader than I think I am now. And I've learned by people telling me and having that constructive feedback. So I think what you just said, Sally, about the time and giving time is so precious. I remember I went through a period of, you're going through your own workload as well. You're busy, you're nonstop, you're rushing from meeting to meeting. And when you're managing a big team and finding the time to give daily or, check-ins or not miss your meetings, your weekly meetings, which I went through a phase of doing because I was working till ridiculous times every night to try and fit in all my work. And my team was up in arms about it, and I realized actually I have to give time. It's finding that balance between giving the time that people need. Because what I also, I think one of my kind of main leadership styles, I guess, is the trust that you said, Rana, and empowering. So if you're able to empower your team and give them the trust to do what you need, what they want to do, to let them grow, ultimately it's going to work out better for you, because they'll want to stay longer. I think for business, the organization, you could see better results, less turnover, but also taking workload off yourself as well, and just making, and if you feel empowered and kind of ownership of projects, you feel happy, and at the end of the day you want a happy team, and that then creates this, there's this nice circle of, then it's a good vibe, you have an open kind of relationship with your team. I think I've always been approachable. I think listening is really key to me, being listening, and again it's having that, it's that balance that I find also, because I'm a very emotional person, and I've always had good rapport with people that I manage, but I have to also, you listen, but you can't get too emotional with things. And it's that, not wanting to come across as hard, because certainly not, but also not breaking down when someone tells you something, but knowing you can be there, and you may not be able to get the results, the solutions that you need, but knowing that you're there supporting and listening. And also I think another thing is that I've learned, and I've made many, I don't think anyone's really natural leader or manager. I think you can learn things, that not everybody works in the same way, not everyone needs to be managed in the same way. So I think understanding how different people work, and readdressing how you work with people and adapting how you work with different team members is really important. And the other thing I remember that I, particularly when I was at Sadler's Wells, and this is something my team said to me when I left, that they loved how I encouraged creativity and innovation, and for people to take risks, because there's so much, we get old, we're so worried about making mistakes. When you're a kid, you're encouraged to make mistakes. So I tell my son all the time, if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. And he's so worried about getting things wrong. But that's what we're like as adults, because we think we're going to get into trouble. But it's if you don't try something new. So I think as well, just being able to, it's kind of empowering, but also, supporting, listening, being there, but getting that balance with your own, like one of you said, your own needs as well, which is hard when we work in an industry that is so full on. And sometimes you just want to go, I'm drowning myself, and my resilience pot is empty. So a few things. I'm sure I could carry on rattling away.
Well, that's brilliant. Thank you.
May I add something to that? Because I got just ignited by the word Sammy said, because Actually, that's so interesting. You're highlighting the aspect of empowering people. And as you were speaking, Sammy, I was like, okay, she has definitely embodied this growth mindset, right? In terms of, okay, it's okay to make mistakes. I am in the process of optimizing myself and get to be like a better leader for the people that I have in my team. And that's also empowering without like doing anything or how you actually lead those team members. But what I see is through your embodiment in terms of growth mindset, you allow them to actually also have like a new attitude towards mistakes, right? So that mistakes don't have to be like bad in the collective mindset. So that means like, as you are embodying this growth mindset, I see that you're actually integrating like a new mistake culture, so to speak. And as well as I wanted to add to Sally in terms of the needs you were talking about, those are also very important. This is also a very important aspect in that way, because we're actually having different employee generations. So when we zoom out in terms of the working environment, we do have like Generation Z, Generation Y, and so on, right? So there's actually like a big clash right now between the old generation and the new one in terms of needs and what they actually want to achieve. So it's not about the money anymore, or not the highest priority, right? It's more about like, how can I exploit my potential, and how can I like develop myself? Everybody's asking right now in terms of, okay, how do you support my personal development, right? So there are a lot of new needs that we need to address in terms of, okay, how can we keep actual ambitious employees right now? So there are a lot of other topics that we need to consider in that way.
That's really interesting, this way of looking at our working community as a very dynamic place with, for the first time in the 21st century, we have people of different backgrounds in terms of race and culture, in terms of language, and probably the widest age range of people working together. So some of the models we're using refer back to when it was quite a monocultured environment. So that's really interesting.
Thank you, Pam. Well, we already touched on it. I'm really keen on getting further into how the concept of compassion informs your work, and do feel free to give us examples, because I personally learn a lot from examples. Sally, do you want to go first?
Sorry, Lily, something was strange with my Zoom there. Did you say me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
and I asked for the concept of how the concept of compassion informs your work, and do feel free to give examples.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I mean, I think when I don't think about compassion as a concept. I see it as something that's very active. It's active, it's deliberate, and it's felt. It's about being in an open state, and it's about going out of your way. That I don't think you can be passive and compassionate. I think you have to be active in order to be compassionate. And for me, I suppose what drives my sense of compassion in my leadership is a commitment and a desire for fairness and for justice, particularly if I'm dealing with, say, obviously employees, but also students. It's really important that I take the time out, as I was talking about before, and listening, all these things, thread into compassion. You've got to be able to engage empathy with who you're engaging with, and also sometimes hear very difficult feedback. And you know, as a compassionate leader, you need to take, you know, for me, I take my ego out and I put it on one side, because my ego is not useful to the process of whatever projects it is that I'm working on. I'm wanting to really dig deep and be an authentically compassionate leader. It's not about me. It's about the bigger picture. I'm part of that picture. I certainly, you know, don't ignore myself within it, but compassion requires you to go beyond yourself, really. But I think this point about it being active, it's a decision. It's not just some people happen to be compassionate and others don't. It's a decision to be compassionate.
Rahwa, do you want to take
Yeah.
this one up?
Yeah. So in terms of like compassionate leadership, I wanted to narrow it down for the aspect of communication. So as you were inviting us to give like an example for it. For example, I was a chairwoman of the board of like social entrepreneurial institution within my university back in the days. So during that, I was like responsible for 100 team members within our organization. And I remember that back then, in terms of like communication, it was very important for us to, or for me especially, to show compassion within the communication. For example, I had I needed to talk with one team member who was not that active in our organization, and we wanted to invite her to leave the company, the company or the organization in that example. And it was important for us to not give her a bad feeling, because we could understand why she wasn't able to be that active. Maybe she has other priorities. So it's not like we wanted to kick her out, but rather like creating like a conversation where she brings us to the same conclusion, actually. Also, of course, as we were like the board members, we needed to also take a wider look at it, because maybe that could bring us, otherwise when we say we have like a conversation with her and she feels like we're kicking her out, that also brings us a bad reputation, because she will tell this to other students, right? So it's not just like that we take a look at the conversation with her, but also zoom out and see the bigger picture, right? So as Sally was saying, right, we're the leaders within this picture. So we need to also maybe from time to time, we need to take a wider look and see the bigger picture, and then again, zoom in and be part of this picture. Yeah. So that means being compassionate in terms of, leading with empathy, as well as also the communication during certain projects, right? So of course, during a project, there are obstacles. So it's not that I, as a leader, tell the people how they have to behave or how to do certain tasks. It's rather being in the same boat with them. That means, like, in the communication, I need to be on eye level with those people. And as Sally was saying, right? So don't bring your ego into the communication. It's not like a hierarchy thing. We are on the same eye level and we're in the same boat. And I also had a conversation with a leader from a bigger real estate company in my Feeling Fortune podcast. And there he was also saying, in every constellation, be it in a big organization or company or in his startup, for him, it's always important to have a conversation with his team members where he empowers people to be on eye level with him. It's not about the hierarchy, leadership, and team member roles in here. We're in the same boat. So he's always like, he's also, how do you say? Well, the context for him is actually because I was also working with him back in 2018, 2019, I guess. And for me, for example, he's one of the biggest leadership inspirations for me, because when I came in there, he instantly like wanted to talk with me on a personal level and get to know me on a very personal level, right? So what are my desires? What are my wishes? What are my visions? And he was also sharing the visions of the company. And also he combined that with my tasks and responsibilities that I will have in the company. That means he gave me the ownership, and that empowered me to be like, okay, like my work has actually contribution to the bigger picture. So he was able in the conversation to tell me how how my role is important for the bigger picture. And that brought some kind of like ownership and also this intrapreneur mindset within the company. And that like, it never faded, right? And also, which is very important, when I told them that I don't want to be part of the company anymore, he was so loving, so compassionate, right? He was very supporting, because on the other side, he was like, okay, of course I'm sad. On the other hand, I'm very happy for you, because back in the days, 2 years beforehand, you told me about your long-term vision. So I'm very happy for you that you're actually taking the step. And that was such a good, such a good vibe when I was like leaving the company. And I was very, I appreciated his kind of communication style and leadership style. And that were like a few examples in terms of compassionate leadership.
Amazing. Thank you. Sammy, I saw a lot of thoughts going on.
No, I was just like thinking what you were saying. Yeah, again, both of what you said. Totally. I mean, what's the question's concept of compassion informing my work? Well, aside from everything else that I said before, I think just the underlying kind of thought of just valuing that human connection, which again goes back to making the time, and that isn't something, and I'm still learning to do that. Something that you kind of picked up on as well, Rao, is about the or maybe I'm going to say it in a different way, but you know, I want my teams to shine, and you know, it's a collaborative, you know, it should be a collaborative working environment. I want them to feel valued and to shine. And you know, I've worked long enough to not have to kind of take the credit for things. So you know, encourage them to really put themselves out there. I don't know if that's kind of making the sense that I wanted it to, but I think that's ultimately I will always be responsible for and accountable for what my team does, but to let people, to share things out, to like you said as well, to understand what the bigger picture is, and to feel that everyone's a part of what you're doing. I think the supporting, the listening, going back to that, always thinking about listening and supporting and making sure that if there are solutions, removing, resourcing, as a leader, you can help with personal development. As you said, Pam, your point was really interesting about how our workforce is more diverse than ever before, and with that are all those different needs that people have. And for some people maybe more old school, or that's just sweeping generalization, that maybe it's a pay thing or a status, and maybe the younger workforce, it's that personal development. So I think ensuring that you are equipped to be able to, that I'm equipped to be able to resource, to be able to support in those ways. So that's always, again, at the back of my mind, because I've had issues in the past with teams where people have been swamped. It's affected mental health and well-being, and it's trying to get in there early and to be that, because it's work. It can be work can be shared around, or then our industry, the arts, is notoriously work heavy and possibly under-resourced, and it's being able to, and when you're younger, particularly when you're maybe younger, new to your career, not having those the confidence to be able to push back. So coming from me, someone more experienced, someone at a level in that who can communicate that, and it's tricky because our ambitions in the industry are there. I mean, where I work now, we have, for such a small organization, the ambitions are huge, but we don't necessarily have the resources, the infrastructure to achieve them, and you have to push back, because otherwise it's just going to affect. So I think, kind of going back to, it's just kind of understanding everyone's challenges and supporting where you can, but also letting people shine. And because I don't need to be doing that, and just giving people that platform and stepping stone to be able to do that.
That would already bring me to my next question. What are your hopes and suggestions for emerging leaders? But now, as we talked, I thought it probably does not only apply for emerging leaders, as well as for leaders who are already out there. So I would broaden it a bit and just say, what are your hopes and suggestions for the leaders emerging as well as already in the leading positions? And Sammy, as I always had you kind of going last, would you want to go first this time?
Sure. So is it hopes and suggestions for
Yes.
emerging leaders?
As well as people already in leading positions.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, within the arts, it is that, keep going back to making time. And everyone is so busy all the time. I'm just thinking about my last few weeks, and sometimes it can come across as not as empathetic and kind as I think people are, really, because everyone is so busy. And it is really getting that balance and trying to get people to understand that there's a, kindness and compassion and empathy goes a long way. And when, especially, as we're going back to trying to retain people in the industry, because there's a lot of burnout. And I think if we don't look after it, then there will be more of a burnout. In marketing, and especially since the pandemic, it's been really hard to fill positions. People have been leaving because there were so many redundancies within the sector, and within my sector, in the sector, over COVID. So it's really key that we look after people, but it's a beast. There's so much there. So I think, that was my hopes and suggestions, that we look after people, and we just are we're open, approachable, honest, all those values, and just value the people that we have and work collaboratively.
I see a lot of nodding going on. Sally Ann, hopes and suggestions.
Yes, I'm a big believer in collaboration, and yeah, I certainly hope that emerging leaders and current leaders rely more on collaboration. I think also the courage to reject out-of-date practice. You know, that it's okay not to do what we've always done. It's okay for us to change and to evolve, and in fact that's exactly what we should be doing. So yeah, so for leaders to be excited by change, and I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we are more adaptable than we ever knew we could be. You know, we've got to take the learning from that, I think. I think honesty, I agree, Sammy, you mentioned honesty and transparency. You know, let's have, you know, particularly when you look at, you know, the current political climate, which, you know, I won't go too far into, but you know, we are crying out for transparency in leadership, because there's going to be no trust unless there's transparency. We've got to be prepared to have difficult conversations, and difficult conversations are less difficult if we believe in the truth. You know, if we're committed to truth, there's nothing to fear if we're telling the truth. I suppose the only other thing I'd say about emerging leaders is to listen to your gut. You know, I think lots of us in leadership will have examples of where we look back and we think, if I'd only realized then that my gut is nearly always right. I mean, I go as far as to say it is always right. We just, you know, we've got to trust it. And really, how high are the stakes? Sometimes the stakes aren't as high as we think they are. Yeah.
Thank you. I saw your face light when as I was speaking. So yes,
definitely. Yeah, because first of all, I was amazed how she got like a full circle moment, starting with like collaboration and ending it with collaboration. That was interesting. And then as well as like this open mindset for new pathways, because actually this is also my hope and my suggestion for every leader, regardless of which industry branch we're in. We need to be open, not just for like the one-sided point of view in terms of like strategic consultation, but rather be open-minded for the emotional consultation on the other hand, because like empathy, like meeting the needs of your employees, which are changing, as we know, as Pam said, like we're getting in a much more complex working environment, right? So we need to put emotional and energetic consultation as high as the strategic consultation is, because it's not sufficient anymore for a sustainable, successful company to be just like strategic and just think about like how can we maximize our productivity, right? We need to have the other part, which is like emotional intelligence, which is, okay, how do we actually create like an emotional free working environment for everyone so that everyone is very happy to get to work and then afterwards also come back home with more energy than beforehand, because we're actually like using the potential of each employee. So yeah, that's my hope actually, that we're open-minded for emotional intelligence in leaderships.
that is very beautiful. Thank you. Um,
Yeah, I
just
think open-mindedness is really key. Just and that I think you mentioned as well, Sally, just that adaptable, flexible, open to change. I think that's really key, and especially with the change in the workforce as we established. Yeah.
Now, just before we finish the panel discussion, we have a tiny bit of time. Do we have questions or ideas and thoughts? Oh, Aled, oh wow, that was really fast.
Yeah, it's just coming from previous experience working in a small theatre company up in North Wales. How would you balance as a leader pushing your employees to do their best work and maximize their full potential, but not becoming overbearing and being seen as a bully? Because it's from previous experience, it's been kind of like in hand, pushing people, eventually making really good work, but also grinding them down at the same time.
I'll jump. Oh, no, go on.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it's a fine balance, isn't it? Getting that right between the two. For me, I would certainly start off with each project or having regular meetings. You know, that communication channel is really key. And if there's a new project you're taking on, I mean, in our world, it's not really like that. It's more having those weekly or regular catch-ups, so you are able to air where you are, or having really kind of key identifying targets as well, because people, or maybe not everyone responds well to targets, I don't know, but I think having that, you know what you need to get to, you know what you're both trying to achieve, and actually having that, again, openness and trust that if you are swamped or it's too much, or you don't have the tools or the skills, or you need upskilling to achieve that, being able to, and feeling that you can approach your line manager, your leader, to be able to get that extra support. Because I think, the worst, I've certainly had situations where people have struggled in the past because they haven't wanted to admit that they can't do something, and then it's just got worse. And I've probably done it myself. I mean, I'm sure we all have. And you just kind of try and you beaver away, and then you just get into a real state. So it's just being able to, again, going back to openness and honesty, and all the different traits that we've been talking about. And then again, for me, it's that empowering. So taking ownership. I had something quite recently where I was in some filming that I'd organised. I didn't need to be doing the directing side. I'm quite happy. I've done enough of that in my career. I give it over to one of my team. You take on and do this. You take it, giving their ownership and leading on it if they're comfortable, rather than kind of bullying, saying you've got to do it, but just saying this is a nice thing for you to do. But I think just having those, for me, those achievable targets, and setting your smart targets, and making it and reviewing them as well, and not feeling that if you haven't got to that, it's going to be a massive failure, and just doing everything with kindness and compassion and empathy.
I'll jump in as well then. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Sammy. I think I'd also add, one of the things that I will often do is say to the team member, okay, what's on your agenda? So rather than setting the agenda for them, asking them to set the agenda, and asking questions like, what else do you think you need to do? What else do you think? Let's imagine together what work there is on the slate here, and how might you go about that? And are there areas that you need my help? so that you're motivating them to take the onus, you know, that actually they're going to have to be the one that leaves that meeting and drives something forwards, but without feeling that you're sitting on their shoulder, which may well make them feel, you know, more stuck.
Thank you. I think we have just time for one more question. If anyone already needs to leave, do so. But Aranzis, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you all for what you said. It's been super insightful and enlightening, and I really appreciate your time. This question doesn't reflect my personal beliefs about the workplace, but I am curious about this type of worker. It is distinctly American and perhaps British to have such a focus on jobs. You know, we're all about the workplace, and we're going to empower each other, and we're going to figure out a solution every day, and we're going to come in, and it's going to be great. What about the workers who just can't be bothered, who will reach their deadlines and do what is asked and contribute, but ultimately just want to be done and want to be left alone? Is that such a bad thing to be in a workforce, particularly in our industry, or is that okay? And how do you handle them?
I think I tend to handle that sort of situation by, I think it's really important to be joyful about what you do. I mean, sometimes, you know, we have a lot on and we experience stress, but I think joy is key. And if that employee is actually not experiencing any joy in what they're doing, I would just have a really open conversation with them and say, is this what you want to be doing? And if the answer is yes, you know, how can we bring more joy to it? And that doesn't mean, how do we make you work harder? How do, you know, it's not about getting more productivity, but I think, you know, life is short, and we should, particularly in, you know, in this industry, you know, we should kind of try to identify where we're going to be happier and what the conditions are that would make us happier.
That's interesting. So I perceived Aranza's question totally different than Sally. So I just jump in and answer it the way I perceived. It's rather not like that the employee is joyful, not joyful or joyful with the work, but rather, I guess, as I received it, a person who's like satisfied with like just doing his job tasks, and then be not that ambitious as like other engaged employees might be. So in that term, I mean, I have the point of view that those employees are also needed, in terms of like, we don't need to have like everyone to be highly ambitious and like doing all like, yeah, all the outside of the box thinking and all the tasks around that, but rather like someone who's like happy with like doing the daily tasks, which are repetitive, right? So, I mean, of course, there's the other factor, which is like technology and AI, and maybe those kind of jobs are not there anymore in a few years or in a century, right? But regardless of that, as we like don't focus on that one, but as long as the person or the employee is fine with it and like satisfied with it, which would be the bottom line for me actually, then it's totally fine. And I would also highly encourage to have those kind of employees, right? Because otherwise, just let's go through this scenario that everyone is like an ambitious entrepreneur who'd like want to do proactively something, a new project or something like that. So that would mean everyone is like pushing new projects, but no one is actually there for the daily routines and the daily tasks. So we do need those kind of employees, I guess.
Yeah, I also
Can I
heard that
just, sorry,
question.
can I just check,
Oh, sorry,
because
Sam.
Aran says, did you mean someone who's phoning it in, someone who's going through the motions, getting there, or did you, because I think there's a misunderstanding about the question.
Absolutely. I suppose I was curious about the uninspired employee who is successful by every objective assessment of their work, but sees no real investment in their work or in their industry. You know, it's a job, it's good enough. I have a window and a decent lunch break, and I'm going to go home and focus on the things that I value over this position. You know, is that enough in an employee?
Are you still speaking, Pam?
No. I just, because there was
To clarify what
because I didn't know which question got answered, you know what I mean? So I know. I know.
Sure. I also understood it as that as well. Well, I have, I mean, I've certainly come across people who work in all different ways, and again, it goes back to people do work in different ways. People's enthusiasm, passion, joy for life, and you know, initiative used in work varies across everybody, of course. And I have come across this, and I think I don't necessarily, what you were saying, Ra, I don't, in what I necessarily need in my teams, you do need someone with that spark, that passion, that initiative. And I have had situations where if that person isn't right, they may have realized they are also not, they're not right, because they'll see how other people are working. And, you know, not saying you have to work extra time, or you have to go, you do kind of go over and beyond what you need to do, but in terms of within the time frame, you know, I will still go and hand out flyers if I need to, even though I did that 25 years ago. You just have to be, it's about being enthusiastic within a certain frame, rather than and I think because I know that all my team I've ever worked with have said my kind of attention to detail, the amount I want to do and try to fit into what we want to do. There's always more you can be doing in marketing, in arts marketing. It's non-stop, you know, it's forever, it's overflow. You can never get everything done. And I think that I can possibly, some of that can be infectious to some people. I think some of how I am might put people off because it might be too much. and then it may not be for them. You know, if there are other roles that are just if you just want to go in and get it done and just do the basics to get your lunch break. And also everyone should be having their lunch break. We don't a lot of the time. Sorry, and we should be leaving at the right time and not working overtime. And yeah, I guess it's a choice, and it's a nice choice that people have. And if someone's had that opportunity to be in our field and have a go at it and realize it's not for them, and see other people, the way that other people embrace it, and the enthusiasm that other people may have. I mean, using initiative is great. And, you know, you can always try and teach people, you know, if I have someone who comes in who maybe, you know, they'll just do the basics, get it done. I say, well, have you thought about this? You know, maybe it's just because they haven't learned to think that way. So it's, again, teaching people, developing, and actually if it's not going any further, then maybe it's not necessarily what you need. So it all works out in the end.
Thank you so much. We are kind of out of time. So I just want to wrap it up. Thank you so much for all your invaluable insights and talking to us and taking the time. And I hope that everyone has a great evening, that this conversation was just a conversation starter, that we all kind of go back and think about how what kind of leader we want to be, what we want to incorporate, how we can incorporate it. Also, I will send out a compilation of information if you want to do further research with quotes and a kind of fun little quiz. And also, if you would fill out the surveys, which will email to you, that would be brilliant. Thank you so much, Sally, Anne, Sammy, and Ahmad. It was a pleasure to having you talk to us. And yes, my hope that everyone gets home or is home and thinks about this conversation tonight.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lily, for organising it. That was really interesting. Nice to meet everyone.
Lovely to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.